Good evening. My name is Carly Capps, and today I will be discussing the Colombian Peace Accord and the coverage it has received from both the United States and Colombian media. Media has an important role of informing people of crises and war on a global scale. It is important for us to have a form of global media that connects us and informs us of world events going on different parts of the globe. Every event affects every country in some way, and it is why it is important that events are being covered and broadcasted in an unbiased manner. For over 52 years, there has been conflict between the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia and the government. The FARC, as they call them, are Colombia's largest rebel group. The founders of FARC were small farmers and landowners, but over 2 decades it has grown to be more than 7,000 active fighters. These fighters include men and women of all ages, from poor rural communities. Colombian states sold off large sectors of land to private owners to pay off their debts, and this led to the FARC demanding more rights and control over their land. The violent acts from the FARC against the Colombian security forces has caused the deaths of many civilians, including children. Thousands of kidnappings have been linked to this rebel group, even holding Luis Mendieta, a police officer, captive for 14 years. Over the years, the U.S. government has sent the Colombian army and police thousands of dollars in funding and training to try and end the brutal war between the FARC and the Colombian government. A step to peace occurred in 2008 and in 2011 when 2 rebel leaders, Paul Reyes and Alfonso Cano, were killed. In October 2016, Colombian voters rejected a peace deal with the rebels by a margin of 50.21 to 49.78%. According to BBC, no voters voted against the peace treaty for the fear FARC would not uphold their side of the agreement, and because they did not want the rebel group to get away with the violent crimes they had previously committed for over 2 decades. Citizens who voted yes tended to be occupied in towns and provinces that received most of the violent attacks by the FARC. 80% of voters in Chaco, one of the provinces that faced majority of the conflict, according to BBC, voted yes to the peace deal. 90% of people voted yes in Bohaya, where 119 people were killed in church bombing due to FARC warfare. The president of Colombia, Juan Manuel Santos, went directly to Congress to get this peace accord passed, contrary to the results of the people's vote. President Juan Manuel Santos was awarded with the Nobel Peace Prize of 2016 for his efforts to bring peace back to Colombia. The Colombian Peace Accord is 310 pages that has 50 changes to the initial peace deal. This peace accord will set in motion at the start of a 6-month process, where 14,000 FARC members will be staying in village-sized sites where they will demobilize and enter civilian life. The main questions that I will be looking for are 1. If the media is swaying the perception of the story. 2. What is the role of the United States now that the peace accord has been passed? And 3. If the media tells us how every side is feeling during the voting and implementing process of the peace accord, whose side is being heard? I will be looking at 3 theoretical lenses, all found in the textbook A First Look at Communication Theory by M. Griffin, Andrew Ledbetter, and Glenn Sparks. The first lens is framing, defined as the selection of a restricted number of thematically related attributes for inclusion of the media agenda when a particular object or issue is discussed. This explains how media can use pictures and other media sources to sway our perception of the news. The second theory is the agenda setting, and this is defined as the ability of mass media to transfer the salience of issues on their news agenda to the public agenda. And the third outlook is going to be the cultivation analysis theory, as a research designed to find support for the notion that those who spend more time watching TV are more likely to see the real world through TV lens. 11 total sources were used to complete this project. Articles from both the United States and articles from Latin America media sources were used. The United States sources used were the Washington Post, Merco Press, the Press Reader, the New York Times, the Guardian, and CNN. The Latin American sources are BBC, Latin American Caribbean, Colombian Reports, SBS, the City Paper Bogota, and Al Jazeera. First, I will discuss if the media is swaying perceptions of the story. Pictures are an important part of media news coverage. They give the story an illustration, a feeling to go along with the event being described. When reading articles, they capture our attention and tell us how we should be feeling as we're reading. The BBC article, Who Are the FARC?, used pictures for every paragraph to describe just who the FARC are, their enemy, and their purpose. Framing, as described earlier, is the way media sources use pictures to sway the perception of news stories. As you see, the pictures used to reflect the FARC members are them in uniform and heavily armed. Depictions of children joined in the rebel group are also shown. This showcases the FARC as a violent force swaying the viewers to support the peace deal. Framing is also used in the picture used to depict the FARC enemy. General Luis Medieta, who was held captive for 14 years by FARC, is shown. This picture shown has an influencing factor that heavily suggests viewers to support the peace accord. BBC explains some of the violent acts that have occurred, such as the blowing up of pipelines, electricity pylons and bridges, and bomb social clubs. Many of their victims have been civilians, who have included children who died when homemade FARC explosives fell short of a rural police station and hit a school, and thousands of people maimed by landmines laid by the FARC. Thousands of people were kidnapped by the FARC for ransom. After all these violent acts were as stated, the article ends in a quote that states, "The FARC themselves insist that they wanted peace all along, but that the conditions were just not right before." Secondly, I will discuss what role the United States plays now that the peace accord has been passed. According to Merco Press, the United States has spent $10 billion in the last 16 years to help Colombians fight against the rebel group and illegal drug trade that they are involved in. The United States has been directly involved in the war between rebel groups and the Colombian government. The United States' involvement against the FARC stirred more of a war, but now the United States is supporting the peace deal, which is resulting in a different response from FARC leaders. Pastor Lab, a FARC commander who was involved in negotiation of peace, stated, "Before the U.S. fanned the flames of war, but today we believe the U.S. commitment to the peace process will give it more strength." The United States benefits from this newfound peace deal because this allowing the United States to strengthen their foreign policy and internal foundations of the work they are involved in abroad. As Frederick Kemp, the president of the Atlantic Council, said, "There can be no strong America with a weak Europe." Media is the only outlet in which we receive the news that is occurring in other parts of the world. When television is such a heavily viewed source for news messages, cultivation theory commences. The U.S. media holds a certain authority in the influence they have on viewers who gather majority of their information from their sources. The portrayal of the United States in the Washington Post is a cautious stand that results in the split vote were released. A pause in the funding proposal that the Obama administration pledged to boost U.S. aid by 50% was implemented. However, the U.S. Special Envoy for the Peace Process, Bernard Aronson, stated, "We will continue to support the Colombian authorities as they try to build a lasting peace with justice and security." The final question I'm going to discuss is if the media is discussing how every side is feeling during the voting and implementing processes of the peace accord. The Washington Post has had many quotes from the past from those who are against a peace accord and from one who is a supporter of the peace accord. Quotes from citizens who voted against the peace deal were, the first by Pured Ramos, who is 60 years of age, stated, "I want peace, but not if it means kneeling down to the guerrillas. Santos has divided and deceived the country." Gina Navarez, 34 years of age, whose brother and uncle were kidnapped by the FARC and released by ransom, stated, "They need to change the accord and that there is some kind of punishment for those committed those crimes. We all want peace, and I respect those who voted yes, but I can't support this agreement. There's just no real justice in it." That was stated by Jacqueline Rueda, 33 years of age. Many non-supporters were interviewed of all various ages. The common factor between them of the belief that the peace deal offered a lack of justice. The peace accord allowed the FARC ease in payment for their crimes. The other side of the vote turnout was depicted in the interview with the supporter. The Washington Post only printed one interview from the other side of the voter turnout. This proves the agenda setting by their creation of heavy broadcasting on one side of the voters while showing minimum support for the other. The interview quote for the pro-peace deal was stated by Rocio Cano, 41 years of age. "I voted yes for the future of my children so they won't have to live in a country of war." In conclusion, media is never 100% unbiased. There are always examples of framing or even agenda setting in news articles, some more heavily than others. Those who have been involved in the violent acts in the rebel group or live near the areas that have been heavily targeted have leaned more against the peace deal. Others that support the peace deal, hoping that even though no discipline will be given from the previous attacks, the future will be a peaceful one. With their peace accord officially passed, it is now up to the FARC to stand by their peace agreement, allowing Colombia and the people to finally be at peace after a 52-year-long conflict. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. This has been Carly Capps with the Evening News. Good night.